We live? What's up, guys? I think we're live here. Been so long since I've done one of these. Bear with me for 1 second. If you guys can see me, let me know in the live stream. I'm just getting set up here. I can see everything that's going on. Okay, we're good there. All right, I think we're live. SJ Outdoors, long time for a live. What's up, buddy? What's up, Steve? How's it going? Doing good. SJ Outdoors. What's up, guys? Post some trail pictures for a video. That I will. That's actually coming out in the next 2 days or so. I got a video on trail camera pictures and videos that we've been getting over the past couple months and things like that on the new Stealth Cam DS 4K cameras. So that's going to be coming out here shortly as well. So if you guys are new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe. Share this live stream out with a friend, invite some people, get some people in here, and we'll go from there. Hunting with Preston, long time no see. Yeah, I've got away from the live streams for a while now on the channel. For two reasons. One, just got busy. Two, the way YouTube works and the algorithm and all that crap. Live streams actually hurt your channel for some reason. I don't know why, but when you continually do live streams over and over and over again, it doesn't really benefit your channel to do them. But I wanted to go live tonight because there's just a lot of talk about food plots and and growing deer and attracting deer and things like that. And I just wanted to go live to try to help you guys and to talk to you and see what questions you might have and things like that. What's going on? Not much. So are you with Stealth Cam now, and are they good? Yes, I'm working with Stealth Cam the past couple months. They are very good. We've been testing a lot of cameras and making videos or gathering videos from the cameras, the video quality, the audio quality, and things like that. And I will post that in the next few days. But I'm very impressed with the video quality and especially the audio of the cameras, because you can literally hear everything. The video quality is so crisp, and they're good cameras so far. So, let me move this over so I can see all the chat. Did you put any soybeans on the ground this season? I did not plant soybeans this year. I planted iron clay cowpeas. I planted some buckwheat, sunflowers, Egyptian wheat, sun hemp. Planted clovers, alfalfa, things of that nature. But I did not plant soybeans. So, the topic of this video. Happy how was your 4th? It was good, man. Just relaxed. Starting tradition outdoors. What's up? What's up, buddy? So the point of today's video is to talk a little bit. Obviously, you guys have questions. Be sure to ask them at any time. I'll try to answer them as they go through. But the point of today's video is to talk about a little bit about what it actually takes to attract deer and make deer healthier, grow deer faster, things like that. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I want to talk about that because a lot of times on social media, what you'll see is you'll get a lot of misinformation because of pro staff people that will use like some sort of granular mineral or something. They'll dump it out, get a picture of a big buck, and say that that's the best mineral out there. That's what it takes to grow deer. This mineral grew that deer. Well, the fact is, if you check back on their timeline, they just started using that mineral a month prior, and that mineral did not grow that deer. So there's just a lot of misinformation out there. There's no magic bullet with anything that you do. Nothing is instantaneous. Nothing works like that. It takes a long time. It's a year after year process to grow deer. It's just something that doesn't happen overnight, and a lot of people will get it in their mind from watching like television shows and such, that where somebody's hunting over a giant food plot and they kill a monster buck. Well, there's a lot of misinformation about that as well. What people don't realize is that farm is strategically managed. It's not hunted for many years. Nobody hunts it. Nobody steps foot on there, and those deer become, more or less aware of hunters, and they're not stressed, and you have more of a chance of killing it. But that's what the average person, us, see, and it makes you feel like you should be able to do that, and it's what should happen every time, and it just doesn't work that way. So it takes hard work, dedication, a huge work ethic to actually attract deer, grow deer. There's obviously simple things you can do to make it happen a little bit quicker, but what it takes to actually attract deer and grow deer is food. Without food, you have nothing. And there's a difference between food and supplemental feeding. Now, the most beneficial part of supplemental feeding is food plots. Food plots are supplemental. They're not there year round. They're supplemental, something that you add. So it takes food. Deer eat 4, 5, 6, 7 pounds of food on a daily basis. They feed 5 times a day. That's a lot of food. You times that, say, just go with 5 pounds. You times 5 pounds by how many deer that's using your property. That's a lot of food. So food is key. Food is number one. If you don't have food, you don't have anything. You can throw out all the corn, all the mineral, all the pellets, all that stuff as much as you want, but it's not growing deer. You need food. Food is green and growing plants. You need that on a daily basis for as many months out of the year. So there's a couple questions here. SG Outdoors, I had a food plot fail this year. It was a mix of sorghum, beans, and peas. That's unfortunate. Sorry to hear that. I do put a trophy rock out for pics and inventory, but I try to improve the browse for better deer growth. Yeah, trophy rock, granular minerals, you're not really benefiting anything. A lot of people are misinformed about that, but for getting picture-wise, it's good for that. Ian Kirby, what do you think works best for growing deer? Food. Greening growing plants. If I shoot a deer in my food plot, will other deer come back to the food plot? Sure. As long as you're not pressured too much, deer will come back to it. For sure. We planted 3 ideal food plots of Eagle Seed soybean. One has been growing almost an inch a day, 3 weeks, and about 20 inches tall. That's awesome, man. Congrats. So somebody asked a question, what is the best thing to grow deer? Well, it's food. Food and birthdays. Without food, you got nothing. And without birthdays, you got nothing. So if your goal is to grow bigger deer, then you obviously have to provide them with massive amounts of tonnage, green and growing plants, and you have to give them birthdays each year. If you want to grow big deer, you have to let that 6-pointer go another year. When he comes an 8, let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go, and you'll grow bigger deer. Most people don't really want to do that, and that's perfectly fine. But most people just want to shoot a deer, and I'm happy for you. I just want to shoot a deer. But the goal is, if that's what you're trying to do, you have to provide massive amounts of food, green tonnage, for as large as you possibly can for that area. Now, another misinformation about this is if you're in ag country. Now, if you're in ag country where you have tons of agriculture around, then most times you don't really need a food plot in the spring and summer, because all those deer feed out in the ag, and that's massive amounts of tonnage, green and growing plants. Typically in ag country is where your biggest deer are, because they have massive amounts of food. You have open areas, you have hedgerows that are open to sunlight, which creates natural browse growth, tons of food for deer. Where I'm at, one of the properties that I hunt on in Pennsylvania, There's hardly any browse at all because it's a closed canopy forest. It's cedars, pines that shade out the sunlight to the forest floor, which doesn't allow any browse to grow. So we've done some things over the past to help increase the browse, open up the sunlight, some hack and squirt methods and things like that to provide that sunlight to reach the forest floor to create a lot of growth. Now, one thing that I have noticed in pine areas and things like that, in shaded areas, is you'll get a lot of ferns. A lot of ferns will grow. Deer don't eat ferns. So it's just what you have available on your property. If you want to supplemental feed, you should supplemental feed with food plots. You need a mix of perennials and annuals. So if you're dumping corn out, there's a lot of misinformation about corn. Corn is nothing but a carbohydrate. It does not grow deer. It's good for the attractability part. I'm not against corn, but corn and feeders, people spend so much money on corn and filling the feeders up and things like that. And corn, sorry to say, does not grow deer. It's good for an attraction, but it does not grow deer. And in my opinion, it actually hurts the deer more than it does help them. If you want a good attraction, you can plant corn for a late season attraction. A standing cornfield is great to hunt over. But for actually growing deer, it does nothing to grow deer. A lot of people like to use a granular mineral. Well, granular minerals, there's no scientific evidence that a granular mineral works. There's no data to back it up. Granular minerals are good for getting pictures. Other than that, they do nothing to grow deer. I don't say nothing. It may do something, but it's not growing deer. Deer grow by food, which is actually green and growing plants. These green and growing plants have minerals in them which are uptake through the roots. The roots suck up the nutrients from the soil, and that's what makes the plant healthy. That's why you do soil testing and you correct the pH in soil. You correct the pH. You correct the fertilization of the soil. You correct the micronutrients of the soil. A lot of people don't realize that when you actually do a soil sample, standard is just to check for your NPK levels and your pH. Well, you can actually request the micronutrient part of that soil test. You can actually get that tested and you can start correcting the micronutrients. Micronutrients are very important and they're overlooked because people don't understand them. Well, micronutrients is what helps grow deer. It's what makes deer healthy. It's actually what makes humans healthy. Without micronutrients, we'd be sick all the time, which, a lot of people are sick because they don't eat a lot of vegetables and things like that, where it's grown from the ground, where it can actually uptake the micronutrients into the, carrots or tomatoes or peppers or whatever it is that you're eating. Those vegetables are full of micronutrients, just like apples. When you eat apples, they're full of micronutrients. So it's live organisms and micronutrients. That's what make people, animals healthy. Ag country is great for green fall growth. It's a magnet after the ag is harvested. For sure. Most granular minerals are salt. Yes, they are. We have 2 food plots on a lease, but we don't hunt on them. We hunt the travel routes to and from. Got to let them have the birthdays. 100% right. Plant their food and they will come. That's right. So, back to all that. Food. 4, 5, 6, 7 pounds of green and growing plants per day. Food plots are supplemental. The backbone to all healthy deer herds is browse. So whatever you can do to create fresh browse is very important. Think of a cow. What's a cow do? When a cow's in a field, it's grazing. It's browsing and grazing. They eat, say, I don't know, plants 6, 7, 8 inches tall. A cow eats that top portion of that plant because the lower you get, the more stemmy it gets, and it's not palatable. And the nutrients are locked in the upper portion of the plant. So when a cow comes by and eats that plant, it's eating the top layer because it's palatable to them because the nutrient levels are higher. So that's the same what deer do. When a deer is browsing through an area, a bite here, bite there, bite here, bite there, they're browsing through that field because they're browsing for the most palatable part of that field. They're eating the top portions of that plant because that's where the nutrients are locked in. So that's the same with like when you plant clover plots. That clover plot is only palatable for so long because it gets tall, it starts getting stemmy, and starts getting tough. So that's why it's important to mow to create that fresh growth to make it more palatable throughout the year. So when a deer is in that clover plot and he's feeding, oops, sorry about that noise. When a deer comes by in the field and they're taking a bite here, bite there, bite here, bite there because it's palatable. They might take a bite of something and they're like, oh man, that's not palatable, and they'll go to the next spot. They'll go to the next spot, go to the next spot. That's why it's very important to create that fresh growth anywhere possibly, whether it's natural browse. It's like ragweed. Deer love ragweed. It's super high in protein, moisture content. Deer love ragweed, and it blows me away. A lot of people will use chemicals to kill the ragweed. It's like, you're killing the food that the deer eat with chemicals. You're killing it. It's like all the grasses and the weeds and things for turkeys. Turkeys eat that. We shot a turkey this past spring, and it was just loaded with so many green plants, and it's what they eat, and it's just all the chemicals that people spray literally for no reason. You're killing all the food for turkeys. You're killing the food for deer. It's what they eat. Without browse, you got nothing. Without food, you got nothing. Natural browse is the backbone to all healthy deer herds. Dave, how long have you been using Antler Grow, and does it attract deer immediately? I've been using it for, I think this is the 4th year, and it will attract them by 2 different ways. 1, by smell, and 2, by a more palatable plant. So if you're in an area where, say you have, this is the video I have coming out in the next few days or so, but say you just have a field and you put a trail camera in that field, and you spray in front of that camera, you spray all the browse. Well, when a deer comes by and takes a bite of it, he's going to realize, like, oh wow, this is tasty, this is more palatable, let's spend more time here. So to say, does it attract deer immediately? Well, it can. It's just like anything else. But once they get a bite of that, then they realize, like, oh man, this grass or this ragweed or this goldenrod or whatever it is that you're spraying, this is really tasty. So I want to spend more time here and come back for more. So it can attract deer immediately. It just really depends, but it attracts by the smell and palatability. Hey guys, been disabled for 2 years now. Want to do food plots, but struggle some days. I know deer eat browse and a lot of stuff. Would you recommend Antler Grow? Thanks. Browse, as mentioned, is the backbone to all healthy deer herds. So if you spray browse, then it becomes more palatable. Just like poison ivy. Deer eat over 700 different species of browse throughout the country. So that's a lot of food. So if you do use Antler Grow, you spray all that browse, you just created a food plot. You just created a food plot for very cheap and more palatable. Like I said, this video is coming out in the next couple of days. We took areas in front of the trail camera and we sprayed, and the deer were attracted to that area, and they spent more time there. So it's all about palatability. Our property, it's mostly planted pines and it's really thick. Lost for blackberry briars. Our biggest part, a half acre. Landing points and are on high points on the property, and nothing grows in the summer. Hunting with Preston. Yeah, with pine areas, cedars, it's all closed canopy forest, so you're going to lack sunlight, which is going to lack natural browse. So it just depends on your property, what your goals are, and things like that. 603 Hunting and Fishing. What's up, buddy? Steve Porter, have you started any mock scrapes yet? Yeah, we started 2 mock scrapes. Been working fairly well so far. We'll be putting more out over the next few weeks. In Kirby depends on the environment and what part of the state you are in and their nutrients. 603. What was the question? Ian Kirby. Oh, when do bucks antlers grow fully? Usually around, I'd say, the end of August is when they typically stop growing. They fully harden within that first couple weeks of September. It's a good time now to get inventory and see them. When you see the antlers that are, the tips are still round, they're still growing. When they start becoming pointy, that's when they're not growing as much. SJ Outdoors, yes, summer mock scrape. Yeah, summer mock scrape. I love summer mock scrapes. They work very well. It's good for inventory and such. But mock scrapes work very well. I think they're probably not thought of much for some reason, but mock scrapes is a good way to attract deer to that little spot. Put a camera on it, get inventory, and things like that. But yeah, so without food, you got nothing, guys. You need food, and like I mentioned earlier in this video, don't let social media, TV shows, or something confuse you, cloud your mind because you see a hunter hunting over a 10-acre food plot, and all of a sudden a deer comes in front of the blind that's out in the wide open, and you're like, what in the world? Everybody should be able to do that. What you don't realize is most times in that food plot, that area has not been touched. Nobody's been in there. It's been strategically managed, and they've gave all the deer birthdays. And that's what people don't realize is TV is not reality. It's not real life. So nothing that you do on the short term grows deer. It's a year-round process, and I had a video come out about this, I think last week. But the number one key or indication that you need more food is if you have a property and you see the deer, the ribs are showing and the hips are sunk in and the ribs are really showing, the stomach sunk in, you need more food. The deer are hungry. Where I'm at, like here, Baltimore County, there's typically more deer than there is food. So when you drive through an area, there's a browse line through the woods because the deer are hungry. There's nothing there. There's too many deer and not enough food, and the deer look sick. The ribs are showing, and they just look unhealthy. So when you start getting into different parts of the country, even Maryland really, but anywhere, if you start getting into areas that are more open forest and ag country, there's a lot of beans and such planted. You have more sunlight, which creates more browse. You have all the ag, the beans, whatever it is that they're growing. The deer have food. They have more food, and the ribs start to fill in and things like that. But without food, like I said, you got nothing. Growing deer is not something that happens on a short-term basis, not something that happens in 3 months. It's not something that happens in 6 months. It's what you do this year that benefits next year. So don't let social media and things fool you into thinking like, oh man, if I do this, I'm going to have a monster buck in 2 months. It doesn't work that way. And there's so many people on social media that, like pro staff type stuff that will start working or start using like a mineral. They'll post pictures and they'll get a picture of a big buck and say, oh, this mineral works great. It just grew this buck. No, it didn't. You look back on your timeline and you just started using the mineral, 2 weeks prior. It's just you got a picture and that buck happened to be there. So nothing works on short term for growing. There's no magic bullet. It's what you do this year benefit. You build on it each and every year, and you see what works, see what doesn't work. But without food, you have nothing, guys. You either create hack and squirt methods to kill the trees, to allow more sunlight to the floor, to create fresh growth. If you have open areas, you plant food plots. You have a mix of perennials and annuals. You plant your annuals to improve soil and to obviously feed deer, but you have your perennials there that feed deer for many months out of the year. If you're in the south, you have a longer growing season. If you're in the north, you have a shorter growing season. When everything turns brown and dies off, deer transitions to woody browse. So even though if you create that fresh growth, more growth of natural browse, when the leaves fall off and become stemmy throughout the late fall, early winter, then deer transition to that woody browse. It's still browse. The nutrients are in the plant, in the browse, briars, and things like that. Fruit trees. There's a lot of people that spend tons of money on planting fruit trees, nut trees, and such. If you're in an area on your property that have tons of nut trees, oaks and such, there is absolutely 0 point in planting more oaks. You already have oaks there. Don't spend money on planting more oaks. Fruit trees is a long-term success. It takes many years to actually produce a fruit, but when that fruit does start to drop, it's very attractable to the deer. So, but it only drops for a short amount of time, a couple months out of the year. You're not growing deer with apple trees, with fruit trees. It only drops for a short amount of time, and yes, it's going to benefit them, but you're not growing deer with apple trees. You're not growing deer with persimmon trees. It's a huge attractability part. Fruit trees and everything are supplemental because they're not there year round. So they may only drop for 4 weeks out of the year or 6 weeks out of the year. Huge attractability part of fruit trees, but spend your money wisely. If you have an area, you obviously can plant them, right? You plant them for later on success, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Then you can hunt over them. You'll have extra food, whatever. But to actually start the process, yeah, you can plant them, but plant food. Plant your clovers, plant alfalfa, plant chicory, plant beans, plant iron clay peas. But if you're in ag country, a lot of times you don't need this. You don't need extra food because there's tons of ag around. You just want to plant a fall plot for the attractability and the food source that can go later into the year. Oh man, I got all kinds of questions here. I'm rambling on. Steve Porter, any poor man plots to do this summer? 603. Yeah, I'm doing one soon. I'm putting my cameras and scrapes out this Saturday. That part is fun too. Yes, sir. It's all fun, man. It's all about having fun. We have wolves in here. We have wolves in my area of northern Minnesota. How do you think that affects deer using our food plots? Well, in open areas like that, deer come in. Obviously, it's an easy target, but I don't think it'll really affect anything for you. 603 hunting and fishing. Dave, the past couple days I've had moose in the plots. Not a bad problem to have. Moose in the plots and in my small property of 20 acres. Will that move the deer out for a little bit? The moose have not been here in years. I'd love to see a moose, and if I actually had a property that had moose on it, I wouldn't care about the deer hunting. My goal is to actually moose hunt one day. That's a dream of mine. It's a target that I have, but it may. I don't have a bunch of experience with moose, to be honest with you, but I don't see it being a problem. But cameras out yesterday and one mock scrape. I have to clear some red cedar for a plot. What are cameras out yesterday? That's mock scrapes are awesome. I love putting cameras on mock scrapes. Red cedar is a problem. We have tons of cedars, pines, and all kinds of different cedars and everything on our property. It's a mess because nothing. It shades out. There's no growth underneath. The sunlight can't hit the floor, and it's just a mess. There's no browse. Glenn Penton, Piney Woods Whitetail Solutions. Hey Dave, anything you know that can help with palatability during the late summer? We get some hot long summers here. Yeah, palatability becomes with the pH in the soil, fertility. But the easiest way by far to create anything green and growing more palatable is antler grow. I am super passionate about it. I talk about it a lot because it actually works, but that would be something you could use to create, to make it more palatable. Anything that's green and growing, fruit trees, browse, briars, food plots, clover, anything green and growing, spray it, it becomes more palatable. We have a video coming out in the next few days doing just that, spraying in front of cameras, just grasses and weeds and such. But if you just spray that in front of your cameras, that grass and briars or whatever it is that you're spraying becomes more palatable. Still shooting the 3-blade swackers this year. Yeah, I will absolutely be shooting the 3-blade swackers and the 2-blade. I love swackers. Patrick DeClark. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Hey Dave, when using antler grow, do you have to worry about an area being over browsed too much and then not having enough for the winter? Thanks. I don't think it'll be a problem. Depends on your deer herd, but most times browse, they're not going to chew that stem, the woody browse part down during the summer, and actually whenever the leaves die off in your area. So whether it's mid-October, late October, early November, things like that, they're going to eat the leafy part. And then once all the leafy parts, the leaves are gone, then they'll transition to the briars and the stemmy part. But I don't think it'll make it to where it just everything's gone. Obviously it's going to be more palatable, but that becomes, you just spray everything, or in the late or in the fall, you just spray around your bow stands for the palatability part. In the spring and summer, you spray everything as much as you can reach because you're trying to increase the nutritional value to actually help grow deer. But in the fall, you just want to spray around your stands or what your food plots or whatever it is, just for the attractability part. But I don't think it'll be an issue. Starting Traditions Outdoors, Two Brothers, do you still like your cedar? Love the cedar. Love it. Big facts. I have in the ground some trophy rock for 2 weeks now and have yet to have any photos of deer licking it. Join the club. Granular minerals. I don't want to get started on it, but granular minerals, there's so much confusion about it. It doesn't grow deer. It doesn't grow deer. SJ Outdoors, I like to get elk someday. I would love to shoot an elk. That's another goal of mine, is to shoot an elk. Same here, to hunt a moose. Here in New Hampshire, we have a thing called a moose lottery. It's just like winning $1 billion on a ticket. Yeah, moose. I would love to do a moose hunt. They're very expensive to do. Unfortunately, I can't do one now. But someday, before I pass away, I will shoot a moose with my bow. Someday. So, back to food. Growing deer. Oh, another question. Hey Dave, looking to meet you soon. We live close. Can I still add lime to clover plot or let it grow till frost seeding? You can add lime at any time. Lead Thompson. We add lime whenever you have time. It doesn't matter the time of year. We've done it in the snow. We've done it in a freezing winter, 10 degrees outside. It just doesn't matter. You can lime anytime you want. You can add lime to existing plots as well, like your clover plot. You can add lime to it. Anytime you can lime is great. Depends where you put any mineral. I have used trophy rock for 6 years. Have lots of picks. I only use them for inventory purposes though. 6 to 3 hunting and fishing. Awesome. Yeah. So again, what you do this year benefits next year. Nutrients get locked in the deer. When you spray antler grow or whatever it is you're doing, those nutrients get locked in the animal. They have the ability to store those nutrients for the following year. But it's so important to have a year-round food source when you're not in ag country. If you're in an area that has all closed canopy forest, you're gonna have a harder time. So it's going to take more work than it would if you're in ag country. You know, ag country, the deer typically are bigger. They're typically fuller. That and river bottoms. If you have river bottoms and ag country, that's where you're going to find your biggest deer, because in the river bottoms, what's everything do? Everything washes downhill. So all your nutrients in the soil, your fertilizers and your nutrients in the soil all run downhill. And where does it go? To the river bottoms. So that browse and fresh growth that's in the river bottoms are higher nutrients, and the deer eat that, which makes them bigger. It's just a fact. So ag country and river bottoms, you know, swampy areas and things like that. That's where you're going to find your biggest deer. You know, Midwest. You know, the soils are healthier. There was a study done here in Maryland 20 years ago or something like that. Out Western Maryland has the poorest deer herd in Maryland. It's Western Maryland. Garrett County, Allegheny County has the poorest deer herd in Maryland. And it was determined 20 years ago that it was the lack of nutrients in the soil. There's no nutrients in the soil. There's no browse or nothing like that. So that's why the deer are so poor. They're skinny, they're small, and there's no nutrients in that soil to provide the plants. The plants are just very poor in nutrition, so the deer are smaller. So that was done 20 years ago. It's just people don't realize this, what people eat. A funny story, real quick. I had to go to Autumn Sky Outfitters this afternoon when I got home to pick up my bow. I got new string and paper tuned up and all that stuff for the year. On my way back home, I was sitting at a red light, and I have some antler grow stickers on the side of the truck. Well, I was sitting at the red light, and a guy pulls up next to me, and he's telling me to roll my window down. I roll my window down. I'm like, you know, what's up? He's like, what's antler grow? And I said, well, it's agriculture, you know, products, micronutrients you spray on anything green and growing. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, it's micronutrients. It's plant food. He's like, oh, well, I thought it was for something for deer hunting, you know, beef deer. I said, it is. I said, it's a deer hunting and agricultural product. I said, it's micronutrients, and you spray it on anything green and growing. And he was like, what do you mean green and growing? I'm like, plants, dude, like grass and bushes and briars and food plots. He's like, well, why would you want to do that? I was like, what do you think deer eat? And he was completely lost. And I'm like, dude, I was like, deer eat green growing plants. I was like, what do you think deer eat? And he was completely lost. And this guy's a deer hunter. And we'll be at a trade show like the Harrisburg show, and we'll be at the booth, and people will come up and they want to buy antler grow and, you know, talk about it and things. And they only think it's for food plots, and it's completely false. It's not just for food plots. It's for anything green and growing. Well, people come up to the booth and will say, like, you know, don't forget to spray your browse. And they look at you, they're like, browse? What do you mean? We're like, dude, browse, green and growing plants, what deer consume on a daily basis. And they have no idea what browse, they have no idea what browse is. They have no idea what natural browse is. And it blows me away, because without browse, like, you got nothing. You know, what a deer eat? If there was no browse in the world, the deer be dead. So it's just a lack of information that hunters have, because they think they have to dump something on the ground to feed deer, and it's just completely false. It's just not right. So there's just a misunderstanding on what deer eat. Think it's important for deer growth to have perennial and annuals for growth all year. I do. back to the standard, a mix of perennial and annuals. You can use your annuals to help prepare the soil to plant your fall crop. But you got to have, which also will feed deer as well, but you got to have that year-round food source, which is your perennials, which is your clovers, your chicories, alfalfas, things of that nature. But the longer you can have that green food source, which is palatable throughout the year, the better off you're going to be, the healthier the deer is going to be. And like I said, if you're not in ag country, you're going to have a hard time with this. You're going to have a hard time putting those pounds on, getting those ribs to stop showing. You're going to have a hard time because there's just a lack of food. Not every county, not every state is the same. Every area is situational. Like my property, one of my properties, for instance, like I said earlier in this video, there's no food. There's no browse anywhere. But we've taken that area. We knew it was going to be a challenge, but we've taken that area, we've increased the food, we've increased the supplemental food, which is food plots, and we've increased the browse, hinge cutting, hack and squirt, spraying, antler grow, keeping that food source there, keeping that clover, mowed and palatable and sprayed, and everything's limed and fertilized and all that stuff, because it's that's what it takes. And I do it because it's fun. I don't necessarily do it because I want to grow the biggest deer in the world. I want to obviously grow deer and see what they can become because it's fun. But I don't care. Like, I don't care about inches. Like the hunting world has become about inches. You shoot a buck and it's like, oh, what did he score? It's like, dude, it's an 8-pointer. I don't really care what it scored. But that's the way everything's become. And if you post an 8-pointer on social media that you were excited to shoot, it's like somebody will comment and have something smart to say, like, oh, you should have waited a year, you should have waited 2 years. What's that deer score? I don't care. Like, most people don't care. But it's just about having fun, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. And it's all an experiment. It's the benefit of like an internal feeling of greatness when you plant something and you see a deer eat it. It's just it's super rewarding when you do see a deer take that first bite of what you plant. It's just it's hard to explain it. It's just a great feeling. Dave, will the antler grow increase the size of the apples on the apple trees? I'm in upstate New York and loads of apples on the property. Thanks. Patrick, absolutely. It'll increase the size of the apples, and this is important for a couple reasons and why I do it. I have apple trees on the property, but apple trees are supplemental. They're not there year round. But when you do spray those, you're increasing the micronutrient level in the apple. You're increasing the size of the apple and the nutrient level in the apple. So when they drop and the deer do consume that, they're eating a more healthier apple, which is just beneficial anyway. So yes, it will increase the size of the apples. It'll increase the tonnage of apples, how many apples you actually produce, and it'll increase the nutritional value of that apple, which mainly micronutrients. So when the deer do consume that, they're eating a higher micronutrient level apple, which is beneficial. That's why I spray everything I possibly can, because you're trying to increase that micronutrient level in the plant. And then once the fall hits, you just spray, around your stand or something like that for the attractability part. Obviously for the growing part as well, but mainly for the attractability part. In the spring and summer, you spray as much as you can reach. That's why I made a video earlier in the year about using the pressure washer, because the pressure washer is more efficient. You can cover larger areas. Backwoods, I hope I ain't late. You're late. We started at 7:30, but glad to have you here, man. Anytime is a good time. Good questions tonight, guys. I haven't been live in so long, but I'm excited. Keep the questions coming. But yeah, you can with the apples, absolutely increase the micronutrient level. Persimmons, you can spray oak trees. It's funny. In Florida, one of the owners has a bunch of property there, and they spray with a pressure washer. They spray the oak trees that surrounds the food plot. Well, they don't spray like the back side of the oak tree. Well, the sides that they missed with the pressure washer, the side that they spray produces like 1 million more acorns than the side that they didn't spray. It's just, but when you spray oaks, you know, that oak is now higher in micronutrients, which micronutrients are very beneficial to deer, not only for helping to grow deer, but for like just the general overall health. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I don't know the exact number, but you would have to eat like 100 times more food now than you did 50 years ago, because the micronutrient, you know, levels in the vegetables are very low because of the lack of, you know, quality of soil. So as years go on, you're eating less nutrient dense food because the micronutrients aren't there in the soil, and the plants can't uptake it. So that's why people or hunters don't understand micronutrients, because they don't know what they are. They're not talked about, but they're very, very important. Like I said, when you get a soil sample, you can request the micronutrient part of that soil. It's like an extra couple dollars. I do it every year just because I want to know what the micronutrient levels are in the soil. But you can actually request that, and they will test that for you. I have the most hardest question, it seems, because nobody can answer or give me advice. What's the questions? Or what's the question? 25 wild 35. How can I get rid of ferns? Pick them or spray them? I don't like using chemicals, but if you have a major issue with ferns, you have to get rid of them somehow. You have to spray them. Steve Porter, do you have new merch on your site? I have a bunch of hats on there. I think that was the newest stuff I put. Like this hat is on there. I think I put on like 5 different hats that's on there. SC Outdoors, could you spray a hinge cut tree in the hinge? With antler grow, you don't want to spray the cut part. You want to spray the actual leaves. So if you do hinge cut a tree, then you just spray the leaves. Here it is. I'm hunting a 17-acre tract. It's mainly a clear cut property. About before last year's deer season, I think it was a clear cut, not sure when, but it's a very, very overgrown right now, like 6 feet. So what exactly is the question? Clear cuts are good, tons of fresh growth, tons of food, but what is the actual question? Okay, so we're waiting on Backwoods here to tell me what he needs to know. But yeah, so food is key. Micronutrients are very important. Like I said, you actually request that on your soil sample, and they will tell you that it's like a few dollars more, but it'll tell you everything you need to know. They do sell fertilizers that have micronutrients in them. You know, not just the NPK, but they have fertilizer that has those micros in there. So usually, like if I plant or something, I'll use like 1 or 2 bags of that fertilizer with the micronutrients, because I want to put those in the soil to help give the plants a jump start and help build the soil up as well. But they do sell fertilizer with that. There's several brands of granular. I don't know exactly the names of them. I know one of them is like Rainbow, I believe, and the other one I used a couple years ago. I can't think of the name of it, but they do sell that. But the micronutrients are very important. Steve, any new videos coming out? Yep, I have a video coming out tomorrow. It's a playlist series on food plots and things like that. Actually, specifically deer food plots in the woods. That starts actually tomorrow. Backwoods. It's right next to a subdivision. City limits. There is a creek to the east and stuff. Why is it the deer doesn't go to my corn pile during the day and they will walk right next to the houses? Why is that? Well, maybe they just don't like corn. Maybe there's tons of other food in that area that they prefer. It could be where that corn pile is located, where they just don't go to it during the day. Corn piles create a red flag to deer, especially if you dump it in a pile, because it's not natural to them. And they know, from all the people in your area dumping that corn pile out, they know, like, if they go to that corn pile, they're used to sounds, right? They see that corn pile, they're like, oh wow, I hear like a tree stand creak or a bow or arrows getting slung at me. They don't get used to it, but they know they get familiar with that sound. So if they see a corn pile, they become very skittish about it because they've been shot at. They hear tree stands creak and squeak and all this other stuff. So corn piles create red flags. It's not natural to them. Usually if you take that corn pile and you just sling it instead of dumping it in a pile, it's more natural because they have to browse through it, flip the leaves over and things like that to get to it. So corn piles create red flags. It's not natural. A lot of times you'll make the deer more skittish. Dave also planted chestnut trees this year. They're still young and they're in grow tubes. Should I spray antler grow? Should I spray antler grow? Don't spray them. Help with chestnut development and nutrition. Absolutely, Patrick. As long as that chestnut tree has green and growing leaves on it, you can spray it. Be careful spraying young trees and things like that. You don't want to spray to the point where the leaves are like dripping. You just lightly miss the tree. On new trees and such, just use antler grow is always 1 ounce per gallon of water unless it's on something new. If that tree is very young, you can just cut back the ratio to a 1/2 ounce per gallon. It's very potent stuff. A lot of people they think you need a lot, but it's very potent. You don't need a lot of it. Less is better. So no matter what you spray, you never want to spray to the point to where it's running off and dripping on the ground. One, it's just too much. Two, it's a waste of product. I'm not going to tell you to spray to where it's running off because it's just a waste of product. Save it. But no. But yes, it will absolutely increase the nutritional value. The biggest myth I ever heard is deer don't look up. That's a fact. I have 3 plots in woods at PG County. Hope your videos address shaded areas. They do. I talk about that a little bit in the videos. They will start tomorrow on that. It's like 5 videos. Seems like does always look up. Yeah, it does, Steve. Does are very smart. They tend to look up a lot. They're very smart, especially that mature doe. She'll start blowing. She'll get nuts. But yeah, when you do stuff like that, when you dump a pile of something out, it's not natural. It just creates a red flag to them, and it's not so much. I want to say it's not so much the pile that it is the deer, what the deer have seen around that pile. So everybody uses corn. So if you're hunting an area, you got to think of how many people are hunting there, how many corn piles there are. There's a lot of corn piles. So that corn pile to a deer now is like, oh man, I got to be careful when I go around that corn pile, because every time I go around it, I hear funny noises. I get arrows slung at me, I get, I get shot sometimes and I get wounded. Deer, they're smart, their corn piles are just not natural, but it's not so much the corn pile. I mean, it is, but it's more of what happens around that corn pile is what makes the deer skittish. That's why it's better to, sling it out instead of dumping in a pile, because it's more natural that way. But you can't over pressure that corn pile, because deer become familiar with noises and sounds and things like that. And that deer has seen a lot of stuff over its course of its life. It hears funny noises. It sees people walking. It sees people in tree stands. They do look up. So yeah. Kendall, I'm not familiar with Maryland, but do you have hogs there, or is this just a curse of the South? If so, do they tear up all your hard work, food plots? We don't have hogs here, that I know of. South, they do a lot of damage. One of the owners of Antler Grow lives down in Florida. They have 3,000 acres, and they always told me like the hogs tear up the food plots and such. I never really, gave it much thought. But when I actually went down there to go hunting, I got to see the damage that the hogs create, and it's overwhelming. Like one hog will tear a food plot up overnight. It's very exhausting. That's why they use different tactics to plant, because the hogs just tear you up. So I went down there several times now and shot a few hogs. It's fun. But yeah, we don't have hogs here, don't have that problem, and I feel for the people that do have that problem. Yes, they do. They damage everything. I don't know about Maryland. Yeah, we don't have hogs here. I'm sure one day we will. I don't think that there's hogs here. Never heard of it, but wouldn't surprise me. To be honest with you, wouldn't surprise me if there was. But yeah, the people that do have that problem, I do feel sorry for you with the hogs. Trapping them, shooting them, getting everybody in the area to help out, trap them as well, shoot them. That's what they do down in Florida. We try to get as many people on the same page to trap them. You're never going to get rid of them. You can help manage them a little bit, but it's a whole neighborhood type thing, surrounding properties that has to do the same thing. Trapping is probably your best bet. You can trap a lot of hogs, but it's a continuous thing. Shooting them helps as well, but trapping is probably your best option. All right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Been on here an hour so far. I haven't been live in a long time, but it was fun coming on, answering some questions, having some fun. So if you guys have any questions after the video's over, you can leave a comment and I'll get back to you guys. If you guys are new, please subscribe and be sure to pay attention over the next couple days. I got a bunch of videos. I got a series, YouTube series coming out on food plots in the woods. Other than that, thank you guys for the questions. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good week.